On a freezing winter night, a billionaire opens his garage to find a starving little girl trembling in the dark. "Please, don't send me back," she begs. What begins as an act of mercy soon explodes into lies, courtrooms, and a truth powerful enough to change both their lives forever. Snow fell thick and relentless over Aspen, swallowing the world in white silence. The Crow estate sat alone on the mountainside, its iron gates buried halfway under drifting snow. Inside the mansion, Nathaniel Crow, 38 billionaire and master of algorithms and empires, stood by the window with a glass of untouched whiskey. He hated winter nights. They reminded him of things he never learned to forget. Just as he turned away, a sound cut through the stillness, a dull, metallic scrape. Nathaniel froze. It came again, soft, uneven, almost like something being dragged across concrete. The sound was coming from the garage. He frowned. The security system was flawless. Motion sensors, heat detectors, silent alarms. Nothing should have been there. Still instinct took over. Nathaniel grabbed his coat and walked down the stone corridor, footsteps echoing. With each step toward the garage, the sound returned, faint, desperate. When he reached the door, he hesitated for a breath, then pressed the switch. The lights flickered on, and there between a black luxury sedan and a silver SUV was a small shape curled on the cold floor. A child. She was no more than 6 years old, knees pulled to her chest, thin arms wrapped around herself. Her coat was too large, torn at the sleeves, soaked through with melted snow. Blonde hair clung to her face in frozen strands. Her lips were blue. Her eyes snapped open at the light. They were wide, wild, terrified. Nathaniel's breath caught. The girl scrambled backward, pressing herself against the tire of the car as if it could protect her. She raised one shaking hand, not to strike, but to shield her face. "Please," she whispered, voice barely sound. Don't hurt me." In that moment, the billionaire who owned half the city forgot every rule he had ever lived by. All he saw was a child who had nowhere left to run. Nathaniel slowly raised both hands, palms open, stepping back to give her space. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe." The girl didn't move. Her eyes darted toward the exit, then back to him, calculating. She was shaking so badly her teeth chattered. Nathaniel noticed the small details, then the dirt under her fingernails, the bruises on her wrists, the way her stomach pressed flat against her ribs beneath the coat. "When was the last time you ate?" he asked gently. She swallowed. I don't remember." Something twisted in his chest. Nathaniel took off his coat and slowly set it on the floor, sliding it toward her like one might approach a frightened animal. She stared at it for several seconds before pulling it close, burying her face into the fabric. Warmth made her tremble harder. "My name is Nathaniel," he said. "What's yours?" For a long moment she said nothing. "Eliza," she finally whispered. "Eliza Hensley. Why were you in my garage, Eliza?" Her hands tightened around the coat. Her voice dropped to a near whisper, each word heavy with fear. "I ran away." From where she shook her head violently. "No, please, don't ask that." Nathaniel knelt so they were eye level. "I won't take you back anywhere," he said. "I promise." Her breath hitched. Tears spilled down her cheeks, cutting clean lines through the dirt on her face. "Please," she sobbed, the words finally breaking free. "Please don't send me back to that house. I'll be good. I'll be quiet. I'll do anything." Nathaniel felt the world tilt. Adults begged him for money every day. Politicians, investors, strangers. But no one had ever begged him for safety. "You're not going back," he said firmly. And for the first time since stepping into the garage, Eliza allowed herself to cry out loud. Nathaniel carried Eliza inside her body, impossibly light in his arms. She flinched at first, stiff with fear, but the warmth of the house slowly melted the resistance from her small frame. By the time he reached the living room, her head had fallen weakly against his chest. She was burning. A hand pressed to her forehead confirmed it. Feverish, dangerous. Call Dr. Myers. Nathaniel snapped into his phone. Now. Within minutes, blankets were piled onto the couch, the fireplace roaring to life. Eliza lay curled beneath the covers, eyes half closed, breathing shallow and fast. Nathaniel watched her chest rise and fall, counting each breath like it might disappear if he looked away. The doctor arrived quickly, his expression darkening as he examined her. Severe hypothermia exposure, he said quietly. Malnutrition. Dehydration. And she's been sick for days. Nathaniel clenched his jaw. She's 6, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes, the doctor replied. And she shouldn't be alive after a night like this. Eliza stirred, fingers twitching as if reaching for something invisible. Nathaniel instinctively took her hand. Her fingers were ice cold. Don't go, she murmured, barely conscious. I'm here, he said without hesitation. I'm not leaving. Hours passed. Outside, the storm howled. Inside, a billionaire sat on the floor beside a couch holding the hand of a child who had stumbled into his life through sheer desperation. Nathaniel had built companies from nothing, but this fragile life felt like the most important thing he had ever been trusted with, and he knew deep down that finding her in his garage was no accident. It was the beginning of something that would change them both forever. Eliza woke up just before dawn. The fire had burned low, painting the ceiling with slow, flickering shadows. For a moment she didn't know where she was, and panic surged through her chest. Her hands flew up, gripping the blanket as if it might vanish. Then she smelled food. Warm. Real. Her eyes followed the scent to the dining table nearby where a tray sat untouched. Scrambled eggs, toast soup, a glass of milk. Nathaniel stood a few steps away, pretending to read his phone while watching her from the corner of his eye. You can eat, he said gently. It's for you. She didn't answer. Instead, she slid off the couch and approached the table cautiously, as if expecting someone to shout at her. When no one did, she climbed into the chair and began to eat. Too fast. Nathaniel noticed it immediately. Eliza shoveled food into her mouth with both hands, barely chewing. Her shoulders hunched, her eyes constantly flicking toward the doorway. Halfway through the soup, she slipped a piece of toast into the pocket of her oversized coat. Nathaniel's throat tightened. You don't have to hide it, he said softly. There's more. Her spoon froze mid-air. She looked at him, really looked at him for the first time since waking up. There won't be later, she said quietly. There never is. The words landed like a quiet explosion. Nathaniel sat across from her. Who told you that? She shrugged, returning to her food. I just know. After a few minutes, her pace slowed. Color returned faintly to her cheeks. She leaned back, eyes drooping, exhaustion crashing down now that her body wasn't starving. Do you go to school, Eliza? He asked. She shook her head. Did you ever? Another shake. Nathaniel pressed his lips together. Every answer carved another invisible line across his chest. You're safe here, he said again, though this time it sounded more like a vow to himself than a reassurance to her. Eliza hesitated, then whispered, People always say that. Before he could respond, she slid off the chair and curled up on the couch again, clutching the coat like armor. Nathaniel watched her fall asleep within seconds. For the first time that night, anger crept in, cold and sharp. Not at her. At whoever had taught a 6-year-old girl to eat like the world might steal her next breath. Nathaniel waited until Eliza was asleep before making the call. Run a full background check, he told his head of security. Immediately. Name's Eliza Hensley, age 6. I want everything: family, guardians, addresses, police records. No delays. He ended the call and looked back at the couch. Eliza slept, curled inward, fists clenched even in rest. Her brow twitched occasionally, as if nightmares hovered just beneath the surface. An hour later, she woke again, this time calmer but wary. Nathaniel handed her a cup of warm cocoa. She accepted it with both hands, fingers trembling. "You said you ran away?" He began carefully. "I won't force you to talk, but I need to understand how to protect you." She stared into the cup, watching the steam rise. "My aunt," she said after a long pause. "Her name is Marla." The way she said it, flat stripped of affection, told him everything. "She takes care of you." Eliza shook her head. "I take care of the house." "What kind of house? The one where you don't sit down unless you're told," she replied. "And you don't eat unless there's leftovers." Nathaniel felt a muscle in his jaw jump. "She gets mad if I'm slow," Eliza continued. "Or if I don't bring enough money." "Money," he repeated. She nodded. "I clean tables, carry things. Sometimes people give me coins. Sometimes they don't." His voice dropped. "And if you don't," her shoulders rose in a small, practiced shrug. "I don't eat that day." Nathaniel looked away before his expression could betray him. "Why did you run last night?" he asked quietly. Her grip tightened around the cup. "I heard her talking," Eliza whispered. "She said she owed a lot. She said I was small enough, and that someone would pay." She swallowed hard. "I didn't wait to hear more." Silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. "You did the right thing," Nathaniel said finally. Eliza looked up, eyes shining with doubt. People who do the right thing still get sent back. Not this time, he thought. Not if I have anything to say about it. The report arrived just after midnight. Nathaniel stood alone in his office, the city lights of Aspen glowing faintly through the glass walls. The tablet in his hands felt heavier with every line he read. Eliza Hensley. Parents deceased. Cause of death, car accident 3 years prior. Legal guardian Marla Hensley aunt. No school enrollment. No pediatric checkups in over 2 years. Multiple anonymous calls to child services uninvestigated due to insufficient evidence. Nathaniel scrolled further. Gambling debts. Loan sharks. Late-night police disturbances. One sealed report referencing a suspected trafficking inquiry dismissed before charges were filed. His stomach turned. Behind him, a soft sound made him turn. Eliza stood in the doorway, barefoot, holding the edge of the wall. "I couldn't sleep," she said. Nathaniel immediately set the tablet down. "That's okay," he replied. "Come here." She hesitated, then padded forward. He knelt so they were eye level again. "I found out what happened to your parents," he said gently. "I'm sorry." Her eyes lowered. "They used to sing to me," she murmured. "Before the crash." Nathaniel nodded, unsure what to say that wouldn't feel empty. "Eliza," he said carefully, "your aunt isn't allowed to hurt you. What she did was wrong." "She says she owns me," Eliza whispered. "No one owns you," he said firmly. "No one ever will." She searched his face, looking for cracks, lies, anything familiar. Instead, she found resolve. "What happens now?" she asked. Nathaniel took a slow breath. "Now," he said, "I make sure you never have to run again." Outside, the storm finally began to ease. But inside the Crow estate, something far more dangerous was forming, not snow, not cold, but the quiet certainty that a line had been crossed, and someone would have to answer for it. Eliza sat at the edge of the couch, legs tucked beneath her, watching the fire crackle. The warmth no longer frightened her, but it still felt unfamiliar, like something borrowed. Nathaniel poured 2 glasses of water and handed her one. She took it carefully, as if afraid it might spill and cost her something. "You said you worked," he said gently. "Can you tell me what that meant?" She stared into the glass, tracing the rim with her finger. "I wake up before the sun," Eliza began. "I clean first. Floors, dishes, the bathroom. If I miss a spot she notices." Nathaniel asked, though he already knew. "My aunt," her voice was calm now, too calm. Like a story she'd told herself 1,000 times, just to survive it. After that, I go out, Eliza continued. She sends me to places where people eat. I carry plates. Sometimes I sweep. Sometimes I just stand there until someone gives me money. Nathaniel's chest tightened. And if they don't, he asked. Eliza shrugged again. Then I work longer. Did anyone ever help you? He asked quietly. She thought for a moment. Some people looked sad. Some looked away. She paused, then added, Looking away hurts more. Nathaniel felt the weight of that settle deep inside him. Did she ever hurt you? He asked, hating the question even as he asked it. Eliza nodded once. Not where people can see. Silence filled the room. Nathaniel rose slowly and walked to the window, gripping the frame hard enough to feel the cold through the glass. He had faced hostile takeovers, public scandals, enemies with endless money. None of that prepared him for this. When you're here, he said, turning back to her, you don't work. You don't earn food. You don't owe anything. Eliza frowned, confused. Then why can I stay? He knelt in front of her. Because you're a child, he said, and children are meant to be protected. Her eyes filled not with fear this time, but with something fragile and dangerous. Hope. Eliza didn't remember deciding to run. She remembered the voices. It was late. The house smelled like smoke and spilled alcohol. Her aunt's laughter drifted down the hallway, sharp, unnatural. She's small, Marla said. Quiet. Nobody will miss her. Another voice answered, low and impatient. You said tonight. Eliza sat frozen on her thin mattress, heart pounding so loudly she was sure they could hear it. She didn't understand everything they said, but she understood enough. Money, debt, trade, her name. She didn't pack. She didn't take shoes. She slipped on her coat and climbed out the back door while the voices grew louder inside. The cold hit her like a wall. Snow swallowed her ankles as she ran. Her lungs burned. Her fingers went numb within minutes, but she didn't stop. She followed the road until the lights thinned, until the houses grew larger and farther apart. She didn't know why she chose the Crow estate. Maybe it was the open garage door. Maybe it was the lights still on. Maybe it was because she was too tired to go any farther. She hid between the cars, curling into herself, counting breaths, the way she had learned to do when she was afraid. 1, 2. Don't fall asleep. But sleep came anyway. When she woke, there was a man standing over her, tall, well-dressed. Shock written across his face. Eliza flinched, certain she'd been found, dragged back, punished for trying. But instead of shouting, the man knelt. Instead of grabbing, he stepped back. Instead of anger, there was concern. Back in the present, Eliza's voice trembled as she finished the story. I thought I was going to die there, she whispered. I thought maybe that would be easier. Nathaniel's hands clenched into fists. You didn't run away, he said slowly. You escaped. She looked at him, startled. No one had ever used that word before. That night, Nathaniel couldn't sleep. Eliza lay in the guest room down the hall, wrapped in clean blankets, a small nightlight glowing softly beside her bed. He had checked on her 3 times already. Each time she was still there, breathing, safe. Nathaniel sat in the dark of his office, staring at the city below. The investigation file glowed on his desk, unanswered questions blinking like warning signs. He could call the authorities now. He could follow procedure. He could hand Eliza back into a system that had already failed her. Instead, he stood and walked to her door. Eliza was awake. She sat up when she saw him, eyes wary again, as if afraid the good part was over. Are you sending me away? She asked. No, Nathaniel said immediately. He sat on the edge of the bed, careful to keep his distance. I need you to hear something, he continued, and I need you to know I mean it. She hugged the blanket to her chest. As long as you're here, he said, voice steady, no one will take you. No one will hurt you. Not your aunt. Not anyone. She studied his face, searching for hesitation. "What if they say you have to?" she asked. Nathaniel exhaled slowly. "Then I fight," he said. "With everything I have." Her lower lip trembled. "People always give up," she whispered. He shook his head. "Not this time." A long silence stretched between them. Then Eliza reached out and took his hand. Her grip was small, but it was firm. "Okay," she said. It was the closest thing to trust she knew how to offer. Nathaniel closed his fingers around hers, understanding the weight of what he had just promised. Outside, the storm was gone. But ahead lay something far more dangerous, a woman who would not let go quietly, and a truth that would soon drag them both into the light. The next morning arrived with a sky the color of steel. Aspen looked beautiful from a distance, snow draped over pine trees, like silk rooftops glittering under a weak sun. But inside the Crow estate, beauty didn't reach the corners where fear still hid. Eliza sat at the kitchen island, wrapped in a soft robe that still felt too luxurious for her skin. A small plate of pancakes rested in front of her, and she ate slowly now, cautiously, like she was testing whether the food would disappear if she trusted it. Nathaniel watched her from across the room, pretending to read the news on his tablet. His head of security had been on the phone for most of the morning, speaking in clipped sentences, tracing the edges of Marla Hensley's life like a crime scene map. Then the intercom buzzed. Mr. Crow, the guard, said, voice tense. "There's a woman at the front gate. She's asking for a child." Nathaniel's spine went rigid. "Eliza," he called quietly. The girl's fork froze midair. Her eyes widened. The color drained from her face. "She found me," Eliza whispered. Nathaniel stood. "Stay here." No, Eliza shot up so fast her chair scraped the floor. She grabbed his sleeve with both hands, small fingers clawing. "Please, she can't come in. She'll take me. She'll say I stole. She'll say I'm bad." Nathaniel looked down at her trembling hands. "You're not going anywhere," he said. Eliza shook her head, hard tears springing up. "She'll lie. She always lies." Nathaniel placed his hand over hers, firm and steady. "Then we don't let her near you." He turned to his security team. "Lock the interior doors. No one lets her past the gate." He stepped outside, the cold air slicing into his lungs. Snow crunched under his boots as he crossed the long driveway toward the iron gate. His heart beat with a calm fury that felt unfamiliar, like a switch had flipped inside him. Marla Hensley stood on the other side, dressed in a cheap fur coat and high heels that sank into the snow. Her hair was dyed an aggressive blonde, and her lipstick was too bright for daylight. She held her phone up like a weapon already filming. "Nathaniel Crow," she called, voice dripping with forced sweetness. "So you're the man who thinks he can take what belongs to me?" Nathaniel stopped several feet from the bars. "You're Marla Hensley." "And you're rich," she replied with a sharp grin. "So I'll make this simple. My niece ran away, a scared little girl, and somehow she ends up in your garage. That's convenient." Nathaniel's expression didn't change. "She came here to survive." Marla laughed, short and ugly. "Survive, please. She's dramatic, always has been. She lies to get attention." Nathaniel's hands clenched behind his back. "I want her back," Marla continued. "Now, or we do this the hard way." "The hard way?" Nathaniel asked. Marla leaned closer to the gate, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. "You pay me, a fair amount, for the trouble, the missed work, the emotional damage." Her eyes flicked greedily over the estate. "You've got money falling out of your pockets, Mr. Crow. Don't pretend you care." Nathaniel stepped forward until he was inches from the iron bars. "You won't see her," he said coldly, "and you won't see a cent." Marla's smile cracked. "You think you're untouchable," she hissed. "But you're not. And I know exactly how to hurt men like you." She lifted her phone higher. "Last chance, billionaire. Hand her over." Nathaniel's voice dropped, controlled and lethal. "Leave my property." Marla's eyes flashed. "Oh, I will," she said softly. and then I'm calling the police. By noon, the story was already spreading. A billionaire, a missing child, a furious guardian. It didn't matter what was true. It only mattered what sounded scandalous. Nathaniel sat in his office as his legal counsel spoke rapidly into a speakerphone. Outside, snow fell again, lighter this time, like ash. She filed a report, his attorney said. Kidnapping. Unlawful restraint. She's claiming you lured the child onto your property. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. There are cameras. I have footage of her breaking into the garage. That helps, the attorney said. But she's also claiming the child is mentally unstable, prone to running away, and that you're manipulating her. Nathaniel looked toward the hallway where Eliza stood half hidden behind the wall, listening. Her face was pale. Her eyes were huge. She's going to take me, Eliza whispered when he ended the call. Nathaniel stood and knelt in front of her. Look at me. She tried, but fear kept pulling her gaze away like gravity. They'll believe her, Eliza said. They always do. Nathaniel's voice softened. Not if we tell the truth. Not if we show them what she did. Eliza's hands trembled. I don't have proof. Nathaniel paused, then said carefully, We're going to collect it. That afternoon, a child advocate arrived, followed by 2 officers, polite but firm. Nathaniel didn't argue. He understood what the world looked like from their side, a billionaire with too much power and a child found on his property. The officers asked Eliza questions in the living room. Nathaniel stayed nearby, silent, letting her speak without pressure. What's your aunt like? The advocate asked gently. Eliza stared at her shoes. She gets angry, Eliza whispered. Does she hurt you? Eliza's throat bobbed. She hesitated, then nodded. One officer glanced at Nathaniel as if weighing him. Why did you run away? The advocate asked. Eliza's voice broke. Because she said she was going to send me away, to people who pay. The room went still. The officer cleared his throat. Eliza, do you understand what you're saying? Eliza's eyes filled with tears. I heard her. The advocate leaned forward, calm but serious. Sweetheart, do you have bruises, injuries, anything we can document? Eliza pulled her sleeve up slowly. Purple marks ringed her forearm like fingerprints. Nathaniel's fists curled so tight his knuckles whitened. He forced himself to stay still. Rage wouldn't help her. Control would. The advocate's expression hardened. We need medical documentation. Immediately, the officer stood. Mr. Crow, this is getting complicated. Until this is sorted, we may need to place the child in temporary protective custody. Eliza's head snapped up. No. The word came out sharp, terrified, desperate. You can't, she whispered, stumbling backward until she hit the wall. You can't take me. Please, please don't take me. Nathaniel moved instinctively toward her, but stopped himself, hands open, not wanting to look like he was restraining her. Officer, Nathaniel said, voice steady but low, she's terrified. She feels safe here. You can see that. The officer hesitated, conflicted. The advocate exhaled. We'll proceed carefully, but understand this, Mr. Crow, her aunt is making noise, and the system reacts to noise. Eliza slid down the wall, hugging her knees, crying silently. Nathaniel looked at her, then at the officer. Then I'll be louder, he said. The next day, the quiet broke. Not with a shout, with a knock. 2 social workers and a police officer arrived with papers in hand, official cold, stamped with authority. Temporary protective custody. Court review pending. Until then, Eliza would be placed in a neutral facility. Nathaniel read the documents once, then again, as if the words might change. Eliza stood behind him, clutching the hem of his sweater like a lifeline. What does it say? She whispered. Nathaniel swallowed. It says, they want to keep you safe. Eliza's face twisted. That's not safe. The officer cleared his throat. Mr. Crow, we appreciate your cooperation. We're not accusing you yet, but we have to follow protocol. Eliza started shaking, not just trembling, shaking like her body remembered too many cold nights. "No," she pleaded, "please. I'll be good. I'll do chores. You don't have to bargain for kindness," Nathaniel said sharply, then softened immediately when he saw her flinch. He knelt, gripping her shoulders gently. "Eliza," he said, voice low, so only she could hear, "listen to me. This is temporary. I'll get you back. I swear it." Her eyes searched his, frantic. "People say that." Nathaniel pressed his forehead to hers for a brief moment, an instinctive gesture he didn't even realize he was capable of. "I'm not people," he murmured. "I'm Nathaniel, and I don't break promises." The social worker stepped forward, tone practiced. "Eliza, honey, we're going to take you somewhere warm. There will be food, a bed. You can talk to counselors." Eliza backed away. Her gaze darted to the doorway, to the windows, to the open space beyond them, exit routes, escape plans. Her breathing sped up. Nathaniel stood blocking the path, just enough to slow the moment, not to stop it. "You're taking her from the only place she feels safe," he said. The officer's jaw tightened. "And if this goes wrong, the city will say we ignored warnings because you're wealthy." Nathaniel stared at him, then nodded once. He understood the politics. He understood the headlines. But understanding didn't make it hurt less. Eliza's tears fell silently as the social worker approached with a small bag for her belongings. Eliza looked around wildly, then suddenly ran to the couch and snatched the coat Nathaniel had placed on the garage floor that first night. She clutched it to her chest, as if it was a shield. "Can I keep this?" she begged. Nathaniel's throat closed. "Yes." The social worker guided her toward the door. Eliza's feet dragged across the floor as if each step was a betrayal of her own hope. At the threshold, she turned back. Her eyes locked onto Nathaniel's. "Don't forget me," she whispered. The words hit him like a punch. Nathaniel walked to her, careful, slow, then held out his hand. "I won't," he promised. "And you're not going back to her. Not ever." Eliza hesitated, then placed her small hand in his for one last second, warm now, but still trembling. Then they took her. The door closed, and the mansion for the first time felt like a palace built for ghosts. Nathaniel stood in the silence, breathing hard, staring at the empty hallway. He had built a billion-dollar empire. Now he would build something harder. A case and a future. The courtroom was colder than the snow outside. Rows of wooden benches creaked as people settled in, journalists, observers, legal aides. Cameras were not allowed inside, but everyone knew this case would live beyond the walls of the courthouse. A billionaire accused of kidnapping. A frightened child. A guardian claiming betrayal. Nathaniel sat at the defense table, hands folded, posture composed. He wore a navy suit, perfectly tailored, but there was nothing polished about his expression. His eyes searched the door behind the witness stand again and again. When Eliza finally entered, escorted by a child advocate, something in his chest tightened. She looked smaller here. She wore a simple cream-colored dress and flat shoes. Her hair was neatly brushed, but her hands twisted nervously at her sides. She scanned the room once, then her gaze found Nathaniel. He gave her a small nod. "I'm here." On the opposite side of the room, Marla Hensley sat with her attorney, arms crossed, lips pursed into a thin line. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue, performing grief for anyone willing to watch. When the judge entered the room, rose. "This court is now in session," the judge said calmly. "We are here to determine the temporary custody of the minor Eliza Hensley." Marla was the first to speak. She stood, voice trembling, just enough to sound convincing. "Your Honor, my niece is confused. She's always been sensitive, prone to imagination. When she ran away, I was terrified. And now she's been manipulated by a powerful man who—" Nathaniel's attorney stood. "Objection, speculation." "Sustained," the judge replied. Marla sniffed loudly. "I raised her like my own," she continued. "I sacrificed everything, and now she's been taken from me." Nathaniel watched Eliza's shoulders tense at every word. When it was time for the defense, his attorney spoke calmly, presenting timelines, surveillance footage, medical reports. Facts clean and precise. But facts weren't what the room was waiting for. They were waiting for Eliza. "Call the minor to the stand," the judge said. Eliza froze. The advocate knelt beside her, whispering reassurance. Slowly, Eliza walked forward, each step careful, as if the floor might disappear beneath her. She raised her hand and swore to tell the truth. Her voice was barely audible when she spoke her name. The judge leaned forward slightly. "Eliza, do you understand why you're here?" She nodded. "Can you tell the court why you ran away?" Eliza swallowed hard. The room held its breath. Eliza gripped the edge of the witness stand, knuckles white. "I ran," she said softly, "because I was scared. Scared of what the judge asked gently." Eliza glanced toward Marla just once, then looked down. "I didn't have food," she whispered. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The judge raised a hand for silence. "Go on, Eliza." "I was always hungry," Eliza continued. "Not sometimes. Always." Her voice cracked, but she kept going like she had rehearsed this moment in her mind 1,000 times. "I had to work every day. Clean the house. Carry things. Go to places where people eat and wait for money." She paused, struggling to breathe evenly. "If I didn't bring enough, I didn't eat," Marla scoffed loudly. "That's a lie." "Enough," the judge snapped. Eliza flinched, then steadied herself. "She said I was useless," Eliza said. "She said I owed her, that I cost money." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. "She locked me in my room when she was mad. Sometimes it was dark for a long time." The courtroom was silent now. No shifting, no coughing. The judge's voice softened. "Eliza, did your aunt ever hurt you?" Eliza nodded once. "Yes." Marla shot to her feet. "She's making this up. She's been coached." The judge slammed the gavel. "Sit down." Eliza lifted her sleeve slowly, just like she had before. Bruises old and new marked her arm. Faded yellows, deep purples. A collective gasp filled the room. "I didn't run because I wanted to," Eliza said, voice shaking but clear. "I ran because I heard her talking. She said someone would pay for me." Marla's face drained of color. Nathaniel closed his eyes briefly, fighting the urge to stand to shield her from every stare in the room. The judge leaned back, expression unreadable. "Eliza," she said, "did Mr. Crow ever tell you what to say?" Eliza shook her head fiercely. "No. He told me I didn't have to talk if I didn't want to." "Did he ever hurt you?" "No. Did he ever make you afraid?" Eliza hesitated, then answered honestly. "At first I was afraid of everyone," she said, "but he didn't make me scared. He made me warm." Something broke in Nathaniel's chest. The courtroom shifted from emotion to precision. Nathaniel's attorney presented the evidence slowly, methodically, like assembling a mirror that would force the truth to stare back. Medical records showed malnutrition. Therapist notes documented trauma consistent with prolonged neglect. Surveillance footage captured Eliza sneaking out of Marla's house late at night, barefoot, coat too thin for winter. Then came the financial records. Marla's gambling debts. Text messages referencing a buyer. A deleted voicemail recovered by investigators. The audio played through the courtroom speakers. "I need the money now," Marla's voice said, slurred and impatient. "She's young. Nobody will ask questions." Marla lunged to her feet, screaming, "That's out of context!" The judge didn't even look at her. "Sit down, Ms. Hensley." Marla collapsed back into her chair, shaking. The final witness was a neighbor. "She cried a lot," the woman said quietly. "At night. I called child services more than once." "Why didn't you do more?" Marla's attorney snapped. The woman's eyes filled with tears, because no one listened. The judge called for a brief recess. Nathaniel sat, frozen hands clasped, heart pounding. Eliza stood nearby with the advocate staring at the floor. When the judge returned, the room stood again. "I have heard enough," the judge said firmly. "The evidence presented demonstrates a pattern of neglect abuse and criminal intent." Marla's breath came in shallow gasps. Effective immediately, the judge continued custody of Eliza Hensley is revoked from Marla Hensley. Eliza's head snapped up. The judge turned her gaze toward Nathaniel. "Pending final review, temporary guardianship will be granted to Mr. Nathaniel Crow." The words echoed. Eliza let out a sound halfway between a sob and a laugh. Nathaniel didn't move. He simply closed his eyes just for a second and let the weight of the moment wash through him. The fight wasn't over, but the truth had finally been heard, and for the first time the system had listened to a child. The courtroom didn't erupt. There was no applause, no cheers, just a heavy silence as the judge's words settled into the air like dust after a collapse. Marla Hensley sat frozen, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, as if the world had slipped sideways without warning. For a moment she looked almost small. Then reality struck. "This is not over," she hissed, standing abruptly. "She's lying. All of it. You can't do this to me." Two officers moved in immediately. Ms. Hensley, one said firmly, "You're under arrest for child abuse, neglect, and suspected involvement in human trafficking." The word trafficking hit the room like a gunshot. Marla screamed. "You think this rich bastard cares about her?" she shrieked, pointing at Nathaniel. "He just wants to play hero." "You'll see. You'll all see." Eliza flinched at the sound of her aunt's voice. Instinctively, she stepped back, then stopped herself. Nathaniel felt it. That moment when fear tried to pull her backward again. He stood not to approach her, not to touch, but simply to be seen. Marla struggled as the cuffs snapped shut around her wrists. Her heels scraped across the floor as she was dragged toward the exit, still shouting accusations that grew more desperate with every step. "You owe me," she screamed. "You ruined my life." The doors closed behind her with a final echoing thud, and just like that, the nightmare that had ruled Eliza's life walked out of the room in chains. The judge exhaled slowly. "This court will not tolerate harm to children," she said, "especially when it hides behind the mask of guardianship." She looked at Eliza. "You were very brave today." Eliza nodded, unsure what to do with the words. Brave didn't feel like the right word. Exhausted did. When the room began to empty, Eliza stood still, rooted to the spot. The advocate knelt beside her. "It's over," she said gently. Eliza looked around at the empty witness stand, the judge's bench, the door where her aunt had disappeared. Then she turned toward Nathaniel. He was still standing where he'd been the entire time, waiting. The hallway outside the courtroom was bright with afternoon light. Eliza blinked as she stepped into it, squinting as if she'd been underground for years and was only now seeing the sky again. People passed by, lawyers, clerks, strangers who would never know what this day meant. To them, it was just another case. To her, it was the end of a life she didn't want to remember. The judge's words echoed again in her mind. "Temporary guardianship is granted to Mr. Nathaniel Crow." Temporary. The word frightened her. Nathaniel approached, slowly stopping a few steps away. He didn't smile. He didn't rush. He remembered too well how sudden movements could shatter fragile trust. "It's okay," he said quietly. "You don't have to decide anything right now." Eliza studied his face. The same calm eyes, the same steady voice. "They said you're my guardian," she said. He nodded. "If you want that." Her brow furrowed. "What if I mess up?" Nathaniel didn't answer right away. "When adults mess up," he said finally, "they get second chances. Kids deserve even more." Eliza shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "What if I have bad dreams?" she asked. "What if I hide food? What if I get scared for no reason?" Nathaniel lowered himself to one knee so they were eye level. Then we handle it together, he said. All of it. She searched his face again for conditions, limits the moment kindness turned into control. She found none. The advocate smiled softly. Eliza, do you feel safe going with Mr. Crow today? Eliza looked at Nathaniel. Then for the first time in front of strangers, she nodded. Yes. The word was small, but it changed everything. Nathaniel stood and held out his hand, not demanding, not expecting. After a brief hesitation, Eliza placed her hand in his. This time, she didn't pull away. That night, the Crow estate felt different. Not quieter, but warmer. Eliza sat on the edge of a new bed, fingers brushing the soft blanket. The room wasn't extravagant. Nathaniel had insisted on that. Neutral colors, a small lamp, a shelf with a few books, and a stuffed bear the housekeeper had quietly placed there. She touched the bear, unsure. Is this mine? She asked. Yes, Nathaniel replied from the doorway. Everything in this room is. She nodded, absorbing the idea slowly. Later, after a hot bath and clean pajamas that smelled like soap instead of smoke, Eliza climbed under the covers. She lay stiff at first, eyes wide, listening. No shouting, no footsteps pacing the hall, no doors slamming in anger. Nathaniel stood outside the room, debating whether to leave the door open. He remembered what fear sounded like in the dark. He left it open a crack. Mr. Crow, Eliza whispered. Yes, she hesitated. Will you still be here in the morning? Nathaniel answered without pause. Yes. Her shoulders relaxed just a little. Minutes passed, then more. Nathaniel checked again. Eliza was asleep. Not the light, restless sleep of a child waiting to be woken, but deep, even breathing. Her face was peaceful in a way that made his chest ache. He sat in the chair beside the bed, elbows on his knees, watching her. This was what safety looked like, he realized. Not locked doors, not guards at gates, but a child who could finally rest. Nathaniel stayed there until long past midnight. For the first time in years, the billionaire who owned everything felt like he had been entrusted with something priceless, and he intended to protect it with his entire life. Healing didn't arrive all at once. It came in fragments, small, uneven moments that didn't announce themselves as progress. The first week passed quietly. Eliza attended her first therapy session in a room filled with soft colors and too many toys. She sat with her knees tucked up, eyes fixed on the carpet, answering questions with shrugs or one-word replies. The therapist didn't push. She let the silence do its work. At home, Eliza followed invisible rules that no longer existed. She lined her shoes perfectly by the door. She flinched when plates clinked too loudly. She hid crackers under her pillow even after Nathaniel told her gently, repeatedly, that she never had to do that again. Nathaniel noticed everything. He noticed how she froze when someone raised their voice on television, how she asked permission to sit down, how she waited to be told she could eat even when food was already on the table. One evening, after she had asked for the third time whether she could finish her soup, Nathaniel set his spoon down. Eliza, he said softly, you don't need permission for that. She looked confused. But what if I eat too much? He frowned. There is no too much. She studied him carefully. What if you change your mind later? Nathaniel leaned back, exhaling slowly. I won't, he said. But if it helps, you can remind me. That answer seemed to satisfy something inside her. Days turned into weeks. Eliza started school small, private, quiet. The teacher had been briefed. No pressure, no forced participation, just space. The first day Eliza cried when Nathaniel left. The second day she didn't. The third day she waved. At night, the dreams came. She woke screaming more than once, drenched in sweat, heart racing. Nathaniel learned the sound of her fear, the way a parent learns a child's cough. He never hesitated, never complained. He would sit on the edge of her bed, grounding her with steady words. You're here. It's over. You're safe. Sometimes she believed him, Sometimes she didn't, but he stayed every time. One afternoon, Eliza came home holding a piece of paper, a drawing, a large house, snow outside, two stick figures inside. She handed it to him without a word. Nathaniel stared at it longer than necessary. "Who's this?" he asked, pointing. "That's you," she said. "And this, that's me. No labels, no explanations, just together." That night, when Eliza fell asleep on the couch instead of her bed, Nathaniel didn't move her. He draped a blanket over her and sat nearby, watching the slow rise and fall of her chest. For the first time, she wasn't trying to run. She was learning how to stay. The question came on an ordinary afternoon, which somehow made it harder. Snow was melting outside, dripping from the edges of the roof in slow, steady rhythm. The garage door was open for the first time since winter had broken. Nathaniel stood inside, sorting boxes, old tools, forgotten memories. Eliza sat on the floor nearby, coloring. She watched him for a long time before speaking. "Mr. Crow?" she asked. "Yes." She hesitated, then frowned. "Everyone at school asks what you are." Nathaniel paused. "What do you tell them?" She shrugged. "I say you're the man I live with." He nodded slowly. That made sense. "They ask if you're my dad," she continued. Nathaniel's chest tightened, but he kept his voice even. "And what do you say?" Eliza pressed her crayon too hard against the paper, snapping the tip. "I don't know," she whispered. Silence filled the garage, thick and uncertain. Nathaniel knelt to her level. "Eliza, you don't have to call me anything you're not comfortable with." She nodded but didn't look up. Minutes passed. Then, barely audible, she said, "What if I want to?" The world seemed to tilt. Nathaniel's breath caught not with fear, but with something dangerously close to hope. "You can," he said carefully, "if that's what you want, but only if it feels right to you." Eliza stared at the broken crayon in her hand. "My real dad used to lift me onto his shoulders," she said suddenly, "before the accident." Nathaniel swallowed. "I'm sorry." She shook her head. "I don't want to forget him." "You don't have to," Nathaniel said immediately. "There's room for both." She looked up, then eyes searching his face the way she always did when she needed the truth. "You wouldn't leave?" she asked. "No," he said. "I'm here." Her voice trembled. "Even if I'm scared sometimes?" "Yes." "Even if I get mad?" "Yes." "Even if I don't say thank you?" A faint smile touched his lips. "Especially then." Eliza took a shaky breath. "Can I?" She began stopping herself. Nathaniel waited. He didn't rush her. He wouldn't take this moment from her. "Can I call you Dad?" she asked. The word landed softly, but it shattered something open in his chest. Nathaniel didn't answer right away. He reached out gently and pulled her into a hug, careful, warm, steady. "Yes," he said into her hair. "You can." Eliza clung to him, small arms wrapped tight like she was afraid the answer might disappear if she let go. For the first time, she wasn't asking for safety. She was claiming it. Spring arrived quietly in Aspen. Not all at once, no dramatic thaw, no sudden warmth. Just small changes that most people missed. Snow receded from the edges of the driveway. Pine branches shed their white coats. Water dripped steadily from the roof of the garage, tapping the concrete like a patient clock. Nathaniel stood at the entrance of that same garage one early morning, hands in his coat pockets, breathing in the cold air that no longer burned his lungs. It looked different now. Cleaner. Brighter. The shadows that once clung to the corners had retreated. The concrete floor had been scrubbed, the lights replaced. The space no longer felt like a hiding place. Eliza stepped up beside him. She wore a yellow jacket that was finally the right size, bright, unmistakably hers. Her hair was braided neatly, and her cheeks were flushed from the cool air. She held a small cardboard box in her hands. "What's in there?" Nathaniel asked. She smiled, a real one. "Just things I don't need anymore." He nodded, understanding more than she knew. They walked inside together. Eliza stopped at the exact spot where she had once curled into herself between two parked cars. She stared at the floor for a long moment, as if expecting to see the ghost of who she used to be. "I thought I was invisible here," she said quietly. "I thought if I stayed very still, no one would notice me." Nathaniel crouched beside her. "You were never invisible." She shook her head. "I was to everyone else." He didn't argue. Some truths didn't need fixing, just honoring. Eliza opened the box and took out the old coat, the one Nathaniel had slid across the garage floor that first night. The sleeves were still torn. The fabric was thin and worn, no longer needed. She held it up, hesitating. "I don't need this anymore," she said. Not with anger, not with bitterness, just certainty. Nathaniel said nothing. Eliza folded the coat carefully and placed it back into the box. Then she added a pair of worn socks, a cracked plastic hair clip, and a small empty pouch she had once hidden food in. Each item landed softly like a goodbye. "Do you want to throw it away?" Nathaniel asked. She considered the question, then shook her head. "No," she said. "I want to remember, just not carry it." Nathaniel closed the box and set it on a shelf high above the floor, out of the way, but not erased. They stood there together in silence. A year ago, this garage had been the edge of the world for her, a place where survival had narrowed to breath by breath. Now it was just a room. Eliza slipped her hand into Nathaniel's without thinking. He felt it, how natural it was now, how unafraid. "Dad," she said. "Yes," he answered, still getting used to how the word filled his chest. "Do you think other kids like me will be okay?" The question caught him off guard. "Why do you ask?" he said gently. She looked down. "Because I wasn't, for a long time." Nathaniel knelt so they were eye level. "I don't know if the world is fair," he said honestly. "But I know this: when someone speaks up, when someone refuses to look away, things change." She nodded slowly, absorbing it. "Like you," she said. "Like you," he corrected softly. Eliza smiled at that. They walked out of the garage together, sunlight spilling across the floor where fear had once lived. Nathaniel reached for the button and paused. "Ready?" he asked. Eliza looked back one last time, not with longing, not with dread, but with closure. Yes. The door rolled down smoothly, sealing the space behind them. Not as a prison, but as a chapter closed. Inside the house, breakfast waited. Books lay open on the table. A school backpack rested by the door. Life, ordinary, precious life, moved forward. Later that evening, Eliza fell asleep on the couch, with her head against Nathaniel's side, breathing slow and even. He didn't move. He thought of the man he had been before that winter night, successful, powerful, untouched, and of the man he was now. Not rescued, chosen. Outside, the last traces of snow melted into the ground, feeding something new. And in a quiet house on a mountain, a child who once begged not to be sent back slept without fear. The garage would never haunt them again, because it was no longer where the story began. It was where it ended, and where a family truly began. Did this story move you? Share your thoughts in the comments and rate this story from 1 to 10. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon so you don't miss other heartwarming stories. Click on the last screen to see the next emotional chapter waiting for you. See you in the next story.